surveillance from a distance that showed that the victim, I failed to mention the victim's vehicle was missing from the scene, and the vehicle had presumably been stolen by the suspect. We did have some video surveillance from a distance that showed the approximate time that that vehicle left. We were able to locate that vehicle several hours later around the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas, and approximately the time pattern that it would take to travel there from Tuscaloosa. So at that time we believed that he was no longer within our jurisdiction, and he was definitely outside of Tuscaloosa County, and we contacted the U.S. Marshals Task Force. We had an active warrant on him. They initiated a case, a fugitive case, and that allows lots of federal agencies to get involved, and VCU has been assisting with the marshals since that time in a nationwide search for this suspect. Again, he was utilizing a false name and possibly dressing himself differently, including hats and glasses at the time that he was in Tuscaloosa, which starts to make sense now that we know more about his past and what he's done since then. Throughout this last month, we've been actively trying to find him, following him leads nationwide, but the U.S. Marshals have been leading that search. We did not release his name to the public at that time because, due to all of the factors that I've discussed, it was reasonable to believe that he did not believe that he had been identified by us. And we thought that that would aid in us capturing him. The fact that he would believe that he had gotten away with it, for lack of a better word. We did notify all the law enforcement agencies everywhere that we had any leads, and they were actively searching for him as well. He had no fixed address. He has a extensive criminal history in multiple states. He is not from Alabama, as is in the thing. He, at one time, was arrested in Alabama 15 years ago via Pickens County for numerous violent felony crimes. And he was at one time had an ID, I think, of some sort with a Birmingham address that may have been involved with him being in a homeless shelter there. But I don't believe he's got any low fixed address. He does seem, based on our background investigations, to spend a lot of time in Oklahoma and Arizona. In those areas there. Yesterday, we were notified that he was a suspect in a murder or homicide investigation in Oklahoma. I'm not going to speak too much to those cases because they're not our cases, and I do not know the specifics of them. But as widely reported in the media, at least 2 individuals are deceased that he is the alleged suspect of, possibly 3. And he was taken into custody this morning outside of Morrilton, Arkansas. We already have investigators en route. We were already in communication with those law enforcement agencies up there. Of course, their main emphasis at that time was to capture him, and we're so grateful that they did. We already have investigators on the road up there to assist in the investigation up there and to see if there's any evidence that can be gained for our case here in Tuscaloosa. As I mentioned before, he's got an extensive history in multiple states, Arizona, Oklahoma, the old cases from Alabama. He was also a federal inmate at different points in his career, and there were outstanding pending federal charges on him for violating his parole at this time. It appears that he was traveling the country in this lifestyle, utilizing false names in an attempt to keep from being incarcerated. And what led him to become a person that violently assaults and murders people, I do not know. But we are confident that he is the one that is responsible for Mr. Andrews' murder here in Tuscaloosa. We never quit working on that case, and I can't speak enough to the investigators. The whole unit, again, came together. We probably had 50 different people from the different departments working 24 hours a day, and were able to identify him. And that very well may not have happened in this case, except for the excellent communications and the unlimited resources, both forensic and electronic, that all of our member departments are investing in. And we have appropriate trained people with appropriate trained resources at our disposal. And when all of that gets to percolating and everybody is working together to solve a problem, people are thinking outside the box, thinking of different ways to do things, thinking of other agencies to contact, ways to find out things around the corner. And in this case right here, that's absolutely what happened, and we were able to identify this subject within less than 24 hours. So,
Jack, knowing that this man is in custody, how does that make you feel that was in jail with his extensive criminal background.
Yeah, there are other. We do not know if he's responsible for any other homicides, but that is being looked into. So there are a few other things that have come to light through this, and we're working with some other jurisdictions on that as well. And those jurisdictions, of course, will have to lead those investigations into those things. But if you look at his criminal history, he was continuously escalating his violent behavior. So he is now at least responsible for 3, possibly 4 homicides that we know about in the last 2 months. I would not be surprised if there's other homicides out there that are unsolved in other jurisdictions because of his lifestyle, using false names, having no fixed address, no employment records, changing and altering his appearance, and then immediately fleeing in multiple states away from the scenes of his crimes when it happens. It would not be surprising to me at all. So,
going back to the scene back in May, we just remember the club members being very upset because
Yes.
it was something that was so uncommon.
Correct.
What message do you have to them now that they have closure of, who this might be now?
Just we want to thank all of those folks that were down there. Were amazing people. They all cooperated. Most of them didn't hardly know anything about this subject, but what they did know, they freely came and helped and cooperated with. Without their help, we wouldn't have been able to do this, because just the little things in passing. When we're working a case like this where we have no idea who this guy was, he's not a member of our community. He wasn't a member of their community. He had been here like a week, maybe 2, in passing. And had utilized the resources or the services down there at the Alcoholics Anonymous at the AA building a few times, and basically was getting stuff from them, food, whatever, water that they would offer, and hanging out with them. In a case like this, every little thing that he said in passing is important. Right, that was vital to confirming who he was. Little bits where he may have been from, where he may have been in jail before, what other kind of charges he may have been in, what he may have mentioned in passing as a family member's name. Not all of that we're able to confirm, but all of the folks that we worked with down there was 100% cooperative. They came to us with information, and I can't speak enough to it. And like I said, this case right here very easily could right now be unsolved if it hadn't been for all of the community that was involved with Mr. Andrews cooperating with us and all of our agencies working together so well.
Jack, would you consider Stacey Drake a serial killer?
I don't know what the official, or if there is an official designee or designator for that, but it does appear at a minimum he's killed 3, possibly 4 people in the last 2 months. So,
Jack, when you've got a case where you've got multiple bodies and cases across jurisdictions, and you also have pre-existing warrants and cases, who gets sort of first shot at this suspect? Will we see him jailed in Tuscaloosa? Yeah, that's being worked out now. That'll probably be worked out between prosecutors' offices, that's something that we're hopeful to find out what the tentative plan on that may be. Very likely he will end up in any crimes he committed in the jurisdiction that he's at. We'll probably have primary custody of him. Where it's going to get, we do have, I think he's currently in the Conway County Jail in Arkansas. I think the homicides occurred in Oklahoma, which is another state, so they'll have to deal with their extraditions there. There may be crimes he committed in Arkansas as well. And then, of course, there's we have charges, and then there's an overarching federal case on him as well for whatever he had before. And I would not be surprised, based on some of our conversations here lately, if there might be some new federal charges that would have come on him, these things you hear about, crossing state lines to elude prosecution and all of that. So that there may be anything. So I think, I don't know when we will get him back. He will eventually be in the Tuscaloosa County Jail. He will eventually answer for these crimes, whether by pleading guilty or standing trial. That's the old long arm of the law that you hear about. Has worked as it's supposed to once again, and I wish I was the one going to Arkansas so I could thank the guys that went in the woods and got him. And just to speak of that again, right here before lunch in downtown Tuscaloosa police got in a pursuit with a stolen car, and about 50 officers from different agencies all went out there and helped apprehend this guy in the woods. So this stuff is going on all the time. And again, when it all works the way that it's supposed to work, it's very reassuring to me. And I can't bring, or we can't bring Mr. Andrews back, but we can make good cases against this guy so that he doesn't get out and hopefully victimize anyone else again. So.
What can you tell us about the victim, Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, he was, from everyone that I've spoken to, and I'm not a very expert on him at all or talked a lot, but that no one had a bad thing to say about him. He was a long-term worker or volunteer there at the AA, and that's probably why he got picked to be a victim, honestly, because he stayed behind with this gentleman after everybody else left talking with him. They said, well, we left, he was there talking with him. And he was probably, and everybody else that we talked to couldn't understand why he had to be murdered, because nobody knows what the motive is, right? He stole his car, but maybe he's just a killer. We don't know. But they all said he would have given him his car and his money if he'd have just asked for it. He didn't have a violent bone in his body. So he's an absolute.
Was he just?
I don't know how their organization is set up. I don't know, but he was either a member or a counselor or a volunteer or a previous member, but he'd been there volunteering a long time. He was, I learned a lot about the AA in this investigation because I've never had any experience with it. So apparently they have open meetings to anyone who would like to come see them. So they do have a lot of folks that are homeless or something that do come by from time to time. A lot of substance abuse is what's responsible for homelessness or transients. So they did have that happen from time to time. So it wasn't uncommon for someone in the suspect's lifestyle to come by and come to meetings and stuff. And they're basically just local folks that they meet together to help themselves get through their addiction. So they're there almost every day.
Jack, two quick questions. One for me, one from our intern Nick here. My question would be, can you disclose Mr. Andrews' cause of death?
It was a homicide, yes, and it was a gunshot wound.
Okay.
It was a gunshot. His cause of death was homicide by firearm. So
what efforts were put into finding out his real identity?
right. Well, like I said, everything revolved around that, because usually when we can determine a suspect, it's not uncommon to have a case where somebody's known by a nickname or a family name or something like that, and we can usually turn around. We have to build a case of probable cause and hopefully continue to compile evidence for the district attorney's office so that they can prosecute the case beyond a reasonable doubt in court. Right, that's our goal. And identifying the suspect is usually not that difficult. Usually we can identify the suspect, and we have to build a case, right? In this case, we were able to build the case. We knew what had happened, and we know that this individual did it, but we did not know who the individual was. So it was kind of reversed. And like you said, I can't speak enough to the methods that were used. I'm not going to release them because I want them to go to grand jury and to trial with them. And we may utilize those again in the future. But the investigators that worked on this, I remember I was there that day. We were thinking outside the box, doing everything that we possibly could. And like I said, we're swinging for the fences, and then one of them was a home run. And once we had that one lead, then we were able to go confirm it, right? So we don't just use, a possible lead, be it from a partial fingerprint or a video camera or one anonymous tip. None of that on its own can stand. That's just a lead. Then we go out and have to get the evidence to prove that's actually who that person was and that he was actually here at the time of the crime. So we were able to do all of that. This very well could have been a case right now where we're reading this on the news and go, I wonder if that was our guy. But it's not, because of the work of the investigators and our different specialty units that work on these things. So.
Has the victim's car been found?
No.
Did they find a weapon with him this morning?
I do not have that information. Like I said, I'm going to have to defer anything up there to those agencies. I don't want to do anything that would impede their investigations, but we do have an investigative team on the road right now to go up there and stay multiple days if necessary to help them and to get whatever evidence that we can to bolster our case. So.
Jack, he was released on these crimes in Pickens County just a few years ago. Was he on any form of probation or anything?
Yeah, my understanding was he was on some form of federal probation, and that he had a warrant or a federal charge outstanding for that because he had not reported in. So I haven't had time. I'm sure all of y'all are familiar with how difficult it is sometimes to get an accurate court record plus corrections record and try to make sense of it. So I have not had time to go through that, and especially with a guy like this, it's so much and so complicated. It may take somebody a day to try to put together exactly what his status was in different jurisdictions and bonds or probations or early releases or whatever. But nonetheless, he wasn't incarcerated. But he was wanted, and he had been wanted for quite a while. And again, he was being very successful at eluding that capture by operating the way that he was. So.
Jack, am I correct that this was the VCU's only open case from 2024?
Oh, yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Can you talk just about? I mean, that's a pretty good track record for
Yeah.
100% close rate on arrest or suspect identifications in case of self-defense.
Yeah.
What worked so well that even this last nagging case, you've got it wrapped up?
Again, I just have to go back down to, we've got 4 member agencies plus our local departments. When something happens, they're right there to assist too. But I think the correct term is called synergy, right? So when you have a multi-jurisdiction unit or any type of a team that is made up of collective parts, you always run across, well, which things are we competing with each other against, but which things are we complementing each other on? So that's always something, and this is outside of my ballpark, but between us, the Northport, UA, and the sheriff's or the police department, we have several different units. We have multiple crime scene units. Well, it turns out that some of them are better at certain things than others. It turns out that a group of professionals talking amongst themselves with different levels and backgrounds of training may come up with a new idea that you didn't think of. Same thing with our cyber units. Same thing with our violent crimes and sexual assault investigators. And then when we have any type of a major incident like this, we don't pull any punches. I can't speak to any other investigative units or jurisdictions. If you're in town, you're coming. We're all coming. We have 100% support from our admin, be it the sheriff or chiefs of police. We're all coming. Everybody's coming till we get a handle on what we've got. We don't have a manpower situation. If we have enough to get a warrant and this person's violent, then we call out our tactical units to go assist us in checking addresses, right? If we need to call out, if it's a city case and the city's crime scene unit comes and they're like, we really could use this capability from the county crime, then they come too, right? And then we all do this to the betterment of the case. And that right there alone is the biggest thing, because most law enforcement, most experienced law enforcement officers got into this because they like what they do. And if they're experienced, what they have to be to get into violent crimes, they've got a lot of experience in doing certain types of investigations. And usually time and resources is what holds you back. But if you ever can get a group of 30 or 40 of us together and say, swing for the fences, man, nothing's stopping you. We're going to work for 36 hours. We're going to do this. We're going to get all of our collective parts together, and we're going to report every hour in a headquarters conference room, and we're going to make decisions on where we're going to go forward next. That's what we're doing. And so that's what seems to work. And I hope, I'll never know for sure, I hope that our commitment to the community doing these types of things and this track record that we can't brag. Things can happen tomorrow, and we do have open cases from the last 4 or 5 years that we're still working on. But I would hope that our commitment to community like this comes back to us with the community trusting us enough to cooperate and to give us information and stuff. So sometimes that's true, sometimes that's not. But I would say in Tuscaloosa, it seems that we get a little bit more cooperation than some people think that they get in other places. So.
You said you have cases that are still open for 5 years ago. What was the difference in this case?
Well, the difference in this case was there was no difference in this case other than the fact that we just had to identify who he was. So like I say, in this case we had witnesses. The cases that we have open, they're all unique in their own way. Okay, some of those, we may have persons of interest that we think, we're just not comfortable enough yet to go to trial. Right? Some of those may be that, as I speak, this case here could have been one of those. The victim was not discovered for hours, and when this incident occurred, there was no witnesses. So, but thanks to video and traffic cameras and some other things that we've got, and there were some witnesses that saw things they didn't quite understand what they were seeing at the time, and we were able to go backwards and forwards in time with some electronic means. We were able to do this. But each case is unique, but we do occasionally have a case where no one cooperates. And I don't know if that's because they don't know the answers to it or they're afraid, and so sometimes those things take time. And so we do have a few. None of those cases are not being worked or were not worked to the same effort as these. You know, we hope that all of those get closed soon. So, and there, I think I've been up here about 4.5, maybe 5 years, and I think we've got about 3, maybe, possibly 3 that are possibly still open. So,
Sorry if you've already answered this, but what charges is Drake facing in Tuscaloosa?
murder. It's just right now just murder. Yeah.
I know it's still being investigated. Is it possible he can face other charges?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a stolen vehicle, we have all this stuff. You know, murder is a no bond offense, right? So this is just I said this before. A lot of folks, an arrest is not the end of an investigation. That's just an instrument for us to arrest somebody, right? So this investigation will not be complete until it goes to trial, and actually the trial is the final stage of the investigation, right? That's when all the evidence gets vetted, right? So. Yeah, anything. That's why we have investigators in Arkansas now. So.